Alrighty. So, I want to discuss U.S. and Western foreign policy. A good source for catching up would be Brian Berletic of New Atlas. You can find him on YouTube. Daniel Dumbro, uh, BT News or Breakthrough News, Mint Press, Gray Zone, and so and a few others. But those are the ones that I really pay attention to. Oh, and also Empire Files. There is a guy that I do pay attention to, whom I'm in agreement about 70% of the time. His dubious choice for partnership for a sister channel called the Duran, with a guy whose name is also Alexander. It's a Greek guy that lives in Britain and talks about geopolitical matters. He's the one that I agree with about 70% of the time. He brings up some very informative subject matter. And as I said, 70% of the time I agree with him. Alexander, I think it's Mercurius, or it's Mercouis. Anyways, we those who have been paying attention know about China's show of force over Taiwan. And Taiwan is about 100 miles or less than 100 miles away from the mainland. It's something like Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts, which is I think about 50 miles off the coast of Massachusetts. So 100 miles isn't a very long distance, and and Taiwan is a province. It's not a country. It is a province, which the One China policy, which even the U.S. recognizes. But Chinese did a military show of force due to weapon sales to Taiwan, due to this so-called freedom of navigation in and around Taiwan. As I said, Taiwan is about 100 miles off the coast of China, of mainland China. So it's a province, and the government leadership in Taiwan have been very provocative. Basically, they've been all but screaming, "We're going to secede. We're gonna go away from it." And the U.S. State Department just, as I said, the U.S. State Department just did a press brief, basically saying that China's military show of force, due to the weapon sales and the U.S. and European countries sending warships through this freedom of navigation BS, has basically alarmed and provoked China to look to the internal security of the mainland. And the U.S. State Department has basically said, we're going to back Taiwan to the hilt, and they want to secede, and we want to recognize Taiwan as an independent country. And so, if Martha's Vineyard off the coast of Massachusetts decided they wanted to become an independent state, I don't think Massachusetts would take it very well. Or Puerto Rico. If Puerto Rico decided that they wanted to become a independent, back to an independent sovereign country, the U.S. would not take that very well, and they would send military and other forces to rein in. Puerto Rico obviously was taken by force and is an occupied territory, such as Hawaii was also taken by force. So understand, this is what the U.S. has been looking for. Even after World War II, the foreign policy against China was to see to it that China was subservient. They would produce cheap goods to sell, and fuck however the people in China lived, or how poor, or how. That's basically been the principle. The U.S. has never wanted a competitor, and China is at an eminent point of overtaking the U.S. not just in PPP, power of purchasing parity, but in the whole of the GDP. And then there was the RAND Corporation, which is funded by the U.S. government. It's a think tank and also a corporation which produces some stuff. And they wrote a paper in 2016, basically saying that limited hot kinetic conflict with China would destroy the economic, would damage economic and other measures, about 30% in China, and it would hit the U.S. by about 5%. But the conflict would be regional. The death toll and the damage would be regional to the Asia Pacific. So this is what the U.S. has been looking for. This whole thing with the China's reaction by sending a show of force from 38 one day to 39 the next, is what the U.S. has been looking for. And the State Department's stating this explicitly shows that the war, the false flag that they were looking for, China just basically gave it to them. And so what it ultimately comes down to is the U.S. is the bad guy, has always been the bad guy, run by a bunch of fascists, racist, hegemonic criminals who do policies that basically bleed the domestic economy for the big moneyed wealth and corporations, which a lot of the so-called politicians have stakes in, vested stakes in. So this is what it's come down to. So the kinetic hot war on China is coming very soon. So don't think it just came out of nowhere, because this has been in the works for a long time. There's a documentary filmmaker and a journalist, British guy. I forget. Oh God, I can't think of his name, but he did a documentary called "The Coming War on China." And you should watch it. Coming War on China. You should watch that. But this is something that's been in the works for a long, long time. The pivot to Asia during Obama's term, that was yet another step. It's been a slow process, but it's a process, and it's going to be another false flag Iraq, or false flag Gulf of Tonkin, or Vietnam. You name it. There's been tons of it. The Iran-Contra affair, the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, what took place in Argentina, Chile, Brazil, Cuba, you name it. This is, and we all know, I'm sure many of you know about the plot by the CIA to have a gun battle, to kidnap and assassinate Julian Assange. The more you know about the United States, never mind the genocidal rampage of the colonial period, almost wiping out the entire native indigenous population. Never mind the involvement of the U.S. in the 2 opium wars in China, which is basically, state-sanctioned drug trafficking and other things like sex trafficking and all sorts of other stuff. All the things that we find, we know are criminal. It's labeled criminal, even in the states. Yet the government of the United States has been directly involved. FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, his grandfather's wealth, and therefore his wealth, came directly from being involved in the opium drug trafficking and other criminal activities. Nixon, Reagan, you name it, all of them. Clinton, with his connection with that pedophile who mysteriously died in jail. It's all connected, and but it's not just the U.S. The UK, which is basically the British. British have been involved, but something that they don't always talk about is how the Swiss and the Scandinavian and the Nordic countries have a sovereign fund, but that sovereign fund is funded by exploitative practices in the global South. They won't allow fracking there, but it's perfectly fine to do it in the global South. And that's just one form of exploitation. They do exploitations in many other ways, and the reason why those countries are always on the top of the happiness index is because the criminal exploitation, which harms not only the people living there, and mostly the brown indigenous and other minorities and the poor of those countries, but it also hits them in the environment. There's the case of Stephen Donziger and with Chevron fighting for getting a win in the courts. Because Chevron, who brought out Texaco, who had allowed billions of tons of toxic fossil fuel dumping, byproducts dumping into Ecuador, harming tens of thousands, and now he's being harming tens of thousands of Ecuadorian indigenous, and as well as the environment. And now he's being prosecuted basically by Chevron. and the so-called governments are like, it has nothing to do with us. So these are just a few of the things. So this coming war, this false flag, which was provoked by the U.S., and they knew they were doing this. It was purposely done, and even though it's not even scanty evidence, but they just need an excuse. So the coming hot kinetic war on China is in the offing in the very, very near future. And so we're going to see another. But this isn't going to end well, because China is number one nuclear power. They have about, I think, 200 or 300 nuclear warheads. Of course, the Chinese know that using them is basically Armageddon. But there's also Russia. And the thing is the U.S. and the West, they've used weapons of mass destruction and chemical weapons. I mean, there was Agent Orange in Vietnam. There was during the Nazi era, they basically used something like the Agent Orange on the Jewish prophet, but also in their war, and the Allies were doing the same thing. So understand something, that these are criminally insane. They do not deserve respect. They do not deserve compassion. They do not deserve tolerance. We should be marching on them, and we should be telling them, get your ass out of there, walk your asses to jail, shut the door behind you, and throw away the key. Because they serve the corporate and wealthy interests, which they are a part of. These are the worst of the worst. There are hundreds of years to thousands of years of them doing this sort of shit. You know, you wouldn't tolerate somebody walking into your home and saying, hey, I have the right to take you home, and there's nothing you can do about it. So why are we tolerating these criminal fucks? Why? And to say, oh, I don't get involved with it, I don't talk, that's just silly. That's just stupid. Is it, you can't value your children, and you can't value your community if you allow them to do this and use your children as nothing more than mercenary fodder to go die for the greed and enrichment of these criminal pigs. That you either have values or you don't. You either value your own enlightened self-interest, or you don't. You either have ethics and morality, or you don't. If you do not stand up, if we do not stand up collectively and put an end to this decisively, then we do not have values. We do not have morals. We do not value ourselves. That's what it ultimately comes down to. When we say, well, that's just the way it is, when we say, oh, I don't get into that, what we're admitting is that, hey, we got no power, we're defeated, and we're just going to do what these criminal fucks say. And the only time that we get animated and involved is when it happens to us personally. That's a surefire way to say, hey, you're the worst criminals in the world. Hey, but we're gonna tolerate. We're gonna let you do it because, hey, we got nothing. when you forget that you are a community, that there are almost 350 million of us, and we can't stand up collectively to say, no, we won't put up with this. When we say, I got to take care of my family. The way you take care of your family is by doing something decisive. The way you take care of your community is doing something decisive. That is how you protect yourself. That is how you gain security and stability. Not by allowing them to keep doing this over and over and over. And the media news is not your friend. They are part and parcel to the criminal fuckery that's happening. They're the ones doing the disinformation. They're the ones starting. Remember, they're the ones that's pushed for the war on Iraq. And after the fact, hey, we were wrong. There was no weapons of mass destruction. There were no chemical weapons. And yet, we still let it happen. We know that the Gulf of Tonkin was a false flag. Is it about memory? No, it's not about a memory. It's about not understanding values, not caring about ourselves, not valuing the community, not actually loving our children, friends, and family. Because if we truly did, if we truly had those values, then we would be outraged. And we would stand up. And we would march on the centers of power and say, get out. Walk your asses to jail. We would shut down Walmart. We would shut down Johnson & Johnson. We would shut down Silicon Valley. We would force them to give up and take it into our own hands, and see that it's run for the collective wealth and stability and security. We would stop all the shit fuckery that's happening. But we don't. To say, oh, I can't do it because I don't have the time, or I can't do it because I can only do what I can do. That's basically, you're admitting to defeat. You're admitting that you are a slave. An often repeated point is that they serve us. Politicians are supposed to serve us, not the other way around. Yet we can't seem to make those two connections. We can't seem to focus on that. The reason why we have militarized police and why they are acting like mafia enforcers to the political and business, big wealth, is because we haven't stood up for ourselves. It's because we haven't forced the issue. It's because we haven't told them it is unacceptable, that we will not tolerate the intolerable. That is what it comes down to. We have not used the force of our collective bargaining, our collective dictates to get the point out. No, it is unacceptable. We will not tolerate it. That is the force I've always been talking about. And if it requires it, then we use physical force. Otherwise, if I'm right, and this kinetic war takes place, and I'm pretty sure, damn sure I'm right, then we are accepting Armageddon, the end of all. And religion plays a incredibly damaging role, because we got these insane people who believe that that you know that Armageddon needs to happen. That is how we get this insanity in our societies. That is how. I've talked about what the so-called religious groups have done. I've talked about how I personally was beaten along with my brother and other toddlers in South Korea because they had us in a back room, windowless back room, putting together fresh out of the oven plastic holly, which made us vomit and get sick in other ways. And when we complained, we ended up being dragged out by habit-wearing nuns with a collared priest and beaten the ever-living snot out of us until we were told, until we begged to go back to putting together the things that was making us sick. This is not just the Catholic Church. Every religion has this. The Buddhists, the Hindus, the Muslims. This is, we know about the pedophile ring. But it's not just again, it's not the Catholic, just the Catholic. Every denomination of Christianity has this issue. The same with the Buddhists, same with the Hindu, the same with the Muslims. It is, if it isn't an existential crisis for you to understand this, then we are bound to have a self-fulfilling prophecy. Get animated, get involved, and get outraged, and be intolerant of the intolerable.